live from the South.
I love City Image.
All right, welcome to another episode of the City Image Podcast. And to just mention the elephant in the room, yes, we're all wearing the same exact clothes from the last episode because it was filmed at the exact same time as the last episode. But we decided to chop it in two because there was just so much depth to go into. If you don't know, we're talking Black Panther, and we invite you, if you did not see episode 1, please go check that out. So many things we got a chance to discuss there. But we definitely wanted to have another episode talking about Killmonger and certain themes running through the film. So yes, for those who don't know who I am, I am Bryant the Theological Giant, back in the building. Who's with me on this?
Hey.
Who's with me?
Your boy, Rich, the husband.
Got Daniel the creator.
Rasool the messenger.
All right, back at you again, talking Black Panther. So, gentlemen, one of the things that was done so brilliantly in this film is just the actual realistic depictions of the 5 tribes of Wakanda to actual real African peoples. And so we want to just talk about that authenticity. It was both in the different African dialects and in the dress. So, gentlemen, can you just relate some of that to it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, just off the bat, I just want to say that was beautiful. I know my name is Daniel the creator. You know, I focus on different artistic things. I mean, to me, that was just amazing to see all of that just represented very well and just coming together. I mean, it was beautiful, like different colors, different. Yeah. And if you know anything about at tribes in Africa, you can recognize some things in that. One notable thing is the Lesotho tribe, or inspired, right, which was the blankets that like was named Wakabi wore. I mean, that was beautiful. I saw that and I was like, man, I want one. But yeah, and then there's just the way that it carries out through the rest of the tribes in Wakanda is just beautiful.
Yeah, I also was impressed. I mean, the Dora Milaje, the warrior tribe, like they were inspired by the Maasai. Yo, shout out to Ruth Carter who designed all of that. I mean, just the detail, the beauty, the vibrancy in the colors, and the languages. Because you heard different. The main language that was spoken when they had the subtitles was, I'm gonna try to do the how you do that click, the Xhosa. In South Africa, that was the main language that was used. But then you heard different dialects, like Igbo dialect that Mbaku had, and different, just actual accents that like Winston Duke is from Tobago. He worked on that. You know what I mean, in a very specific way. And these different actors and actresses from all over the globe really honed their craft in a way that gave depth and just honor to these different cultures. And I think that needed to be, acknowledged and celebrated.
Yeah, and it's beautiful to see them not shortchange in any way, because it would have been reasonable to think that, this is going to be an American audience. They're not really going to notice, like, if we have different accents. But it's like, no, to take the time to be so meticulous and so well thought out to just represent Africa well, beautiful. Yeah.
And I love the twist, the futuristic twist that were put on it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I want to cop that, T'Challa, the white that he had on when he went into that ancestral plane.
Yes.
Oh, man.
And then the black, with the design, I love that mix of the old and new. I will straight rock that.
Yeah. I want T'Challa's UN suit with the little with the scarf.
Yes.
Did you guys peep, first of all, I know this is a little left field, did you guys peep the how similar a lot of the scenes were to Lion King?
I've been seeing that.
Okay,
a lot of comparisons.
When I saw it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is just like Lion King."
Right. Killmonger is Scar.
Yes, exactly. And then when he goes back to the ancestral plane and
he sees Mufasa. In the
he sees it's like his dad's there, the same tree, like
you Mufasa's
the sky. And I noticed it mainly because of the sky and the color of the sky.
Forrest Whitaker Rafiki.
Yes, absolutely.
That actually worked.
True.
That actually gotta work.
Yes. Seriously. Oh, man.
All right, gentlemen. So we have to talk about the main antagonist in this film, Eric Killmonger.
My goodness.
He is by many sort of analysts, enthusiasts, the best.
All the analysts.
all the analysts.
All the nerds.
all the nerds. The best villain that Marvel has put forward. Very complex individual, someone that I resonated with deeply. So, gentlemen, just want to know your thoughts, man. Let's talk Eric Killmonger.
Where do we even begin?
Yeah, we just got to dive in.
Well, let's talk about how we first get introduced to him, right? So he's in the museum.
Yeah.
And he's looking at all these different artifacts, and I just love the way he's playing this girl.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, "Oh yeah, I hear you the expert.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell me about this. Tell me about that." So you can already see like he's a very confident man.
Right. Yeah.
Very stylish as well.
Absolutely.
I appreciated that.
Yeah.
And then of course like one of the greatest lines in the whole movie where he really breaks it down for her. Where he's just like, "Yo, I'm gonna take this scythe off your hands."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, it's not for sale." And I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. And it's just like, yo, like, how do you think your ancestors got this? Do you think they paid a fair price? What a powerful statement. What did you guys think when y'all heard that?
Man.
At that moment, I was like, am I gonna not like Eric Killmonger? Because he's starting on the right foot.
Well,
like
you're
he's
making
making
him
a lot
too
of
hot
sense.
right now.
Like, okay, I'm kind of feeling what you're saying. So at that moment, I'm like, okay, because I don't know anything about the comics. I don't know how he's portraying the comics. So I'm seeing this, and obviously this gets unpacked as it moves forward and his character's developed. A person deeply, deeply concerned about the welfare and the advancement of black peoples. So that draws you in immediately. And then obviously, Claw comes in, shoots the guy. It was just overall just a fun scene.
For me, and I didn't catch all of this the first time around. The first time around, it was just like I was more fixated on like, okay, he's being somewhat sarcastic and then, whatever. The second time I watched it, I peeped the irony of the situation.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
because at first I thought he was being oversensitive, but then you realize, no, he has peeped out the fact that they are profiling him in the museum.
Yeah.
They see a black man in the museum and they're like, okay, following him around. And because he's trained as a CIA operative, he's aware of the fact that they're following him around. And so then he uses the fact that he probably looks to them like uneducated. This white woman clearly knows about African culture more than he does. Meanwhile, she really doesn't know. She misidentifies the artifact that he's going there to get as Benin, from Benin, when it's actually from Wakanda. And she doesn't even know what a Wakanda is. And I just thought, but then ultimately to get to this place where it's like, you're afraid that I'm going to steal something that your people stole. Like, you know what I mean? It's just the irony of that situation, and just the layers of it was just so deep. And the fact that his girl, my wife picked this up, was at the coffee table. She was the one that put the poison in the drink. You know what I mean? So it was like, all the just different strategy and chess game with that. And I think here introduces a very complex and dynamic person. And my emotional experience with Killmonger went from someone that I really didn't like at all because he was opposing T'Challa, even though I liked some of the things he had to say, to by the end, this was the first time ever in a movie where I identified with the villain more than the hero.
Yeah.
I felt him. Like, now I didn't agree with him in his approach, but I mean, just the different things that he expressed, and it was like, yo, I felt like my story as an African American. Like, you know what I mean? All the wars, the U.S. wars that he felt like he participated in, I felt like he was in a lot of ways hip hop. That's
a great way to put it.
Yeah, the anger, the edginess, the boldness, the sense of loss that he had, and his disconnection. And so I just thought that at the end when he says a kid from Oakland believing in fairy tales, like to him, this idea of a Wakanda that was wealthy and rich and that he was connected to felt like a fairy tale.
Yeah.
Because he was completely disconnected from that, and all he knew was I was left and abandoned by the people
in a place that was very much the opposite of a fairy tale. Growing up in Cali, seeing, because at one point when he's talking to his dad and his dad's like, no tears for me, and he's like, no, everybody dies here in this area, no tears. So he's like growing up hearing about this fairy tale, and he's living in hell in the projects. But I very much like agree with you, Rasool. There was this sense in which my mind was like, no, this plan to bring weapons to oppress people all over the world, like that's not gonna work. Like I see his anger and the way he lifts up one of the ladies and the chokes her, and you just see him, like, that intellectually your mind is telling you he's not a good king, but in your heart you're like, I feel him though. I feel his anger, his pain. It captures very much the frustrations we feel as Black people, as oppressed peoples, wanting to have this great liberator, wanting to put our foots on the necks of our oppressor right now. And there was just, he just kind of encapsulated all of that and fed into that. Now you can make an argument of whether that's a good thing to feed into or not, but it's there. And it's in the hearts and minds of many Black peoples, oppressed peoples all over the world. And Eric Killmonger kind of just encapsulated that and brought that out in a very sophisticated way. So,
and I felt like the misogyny, and this is why I'm saying part of hip hop, like, because on the one hand I identify and I feel the pain and the anger and the realness, but on the other end I'm like, yo, he straight capped his girlfriend without even thinking twice.
And killed Adora Milaje.
You know what I mean? Like, and then killed Adora Milaje, and it was just like, gripped up that old woman, like, what I mean, just gripped up.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you see all of that, and yet Wakabi was willing to ignore all of that because of his own pain, of his own father, you know what I mean, being killed by Claw, and was like, yo, let's go.
Yes.
And I feel like that in, the exchange and in the dynamic in this, there's these two different visions of how we will respond to the world and how we will respond to this sense of loss. And so I could relate to it even if I felt like it was the wrong way to go about it. But then the other last piece that I thought was powerful, it was the scene that the idea that he would want to burn the flowers in the first place is bizarre, but only because he has no value for tradition and heritage and legacy, because he didn't have one himself that was like he was a part of. And so I feel like in a lot of ways that kind of is reflective of kind of the stuff that we have to work through in order to understand our place when you are dislocated, from your past in a lot of ways.
Yeah, just kind of jump in on that point. I noticed in the movie, when I watched it the second time, many people introduced themselves as name, son, or daughter of name. And what I found fascinating about that is that this idea of legacy. So we see that also when he goes to the ancestral plane. So it's just like they're always trying to show you, like, T'Challa is, even in being the Black Panther, he's a Black Panther in a line of Black Panthers. He's a king in a line of kings. And even with the plants, they're just like, man, we have to take good care of the plants because there's another king that's going to come after you. And you being temporary is something they very much accept, right? You're going to pass, and then your offspring will then take your spot. And then looking at Killmonger, and it's just like, man, he has no clue about legacy, and he is just the ultimate power hungry monster, where it's just like, man, I don't even want my son to usurp me, so burn everything. I'm the last Black Panther you gonna get.
I'm the king.
And it's so short-sighted, but it's also indicative of just like how we don't see legacy. We don't actually see past ourselves. We're not looking to leave anything. We're looking to just take for ourselves. I don't. And it exposed me in just my own thinking. I was just like, man, I don't think long term. I don't
Yeah.
think 2 generations past me.
Yeah,
you know?
and I don't think 2 generations who came before me.
Yeah, me neither.
There's no respect for he captures the American mindset versus other countries where so much respect is given to your elders, and you thinking about coming generations. And if we think about coming generations is how to make sure they got money and they're not poor, but outside of that, like, we're not really, there's no conscious effort to think through that or to really care about your ancestors. And you could think about, you could blame that on the fact that we've been so separated from our ancestors, and many Black Americans they don't even have their immediate parents in the picture. So can you blame Killmonger for not caring about tradition, where he's like, I just brought up, it's just been me, and I've had to fend for myself. I'm gonna be king, I'm gonna liberate the people, and that's it. So
And that last line,
Oh man,
you
we want to go there right now.
bury me in the ocean with my ancestors who knew that death was better than bondage. And it was so real. Like, it was just like,
I was like, wait, is this still Marvel? We still in the
Yeah.
Marvel universe right now?
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so interesting because, you know, T'Challa offers this olive branch
Yeah, he
to
says,
him.
we
at
can
the
still
end,
heal you.
You know, and he sees the beauty of Wakanda. And I just thought that was just powerful. So as much as he was this, you know, very violent and aggressive, but it wasn't just blind craziness. Like, it was rooted in pain and a vision that was trying to be helpful. And I think that's really instructive for a lot of our movements, even of liberation, to go, you know, we cannot, we have to have a bigger vision than just, you know, revenge. You know what I mean? To get to a place of love and to get to a place of, let's, you know, be a part of something bigger than ourselves. And not, that's what T'Challa kept saying to him, is like, you want to be like those you hate. And I think that's always a challenge in our journey.
The oppressor the oppressed wanting to be an oppressor.
Yes.
What is Killmonger's father's name again?
Njobu.
Njobu. And I was like, yo, the lesson that Wakanda needed from Njobu, they got from Killmonger. Which is this idea, like, we need to see the world as bigger. We need to see everybody as us. And he died for that.
yeah.
But his son was able to bring that same message to T'Challa in a weird, messed up way.
Yeah, in a messed up way.
But he's the factor that changed T'Challa's heart and moved him towards, like, no, we need to open up a lot more.
Yeah.
And you see that how upset he is at his father for letting, you know, Eric stay. You know what I'm saying?
So in many ways, Killmonger, sort of like with you know, the Black Panther doesn't survive without the women in his life. He doesn't have a grander view of what it means to be a king and care for the oppressed without Killmonger kind of upsetting that whole framework and causing him to see that his father was wrong for abandoning him, and beginning to reframe his whole vision for what it means to care for others from this place of having all these resources and having all this power. So in many respects, like, Killmonger is kind of like the hero because he helps bring this vision. Obviously, he wanted to go about it in the wrong way, and he was a monster. But it does help to T'Challa to reformulate.
Yeah. But I do think it wasn't that alone. I do think it was also Nakia's influence.
Yeah, but up until that point, he was resistant to Nakia. You know, and so I mean, there's a couple of things. There's a couple of things kind of going into that, you know, feeding that. But I mean, eventually he does recognize the need that this is. We have to change the way we're doing things.
Yeah, definitely. We just want to get you guys' thoughts on when Killmonger shows up. He does what, you know, T'Challa couldn't do. He brings Claw. W'Kabi is like, oh shoot, maybe this is the guy. And he busts into the throne room and he's like, yo, I want a challenge, right? And everyone's like, get this guy out of here. Who are you anyway? And what I found fascinating, a couple things. First one, he says, ask me who I am. Nobody's responding. And it was just like, man, like, we are so dismissive that he even has a connection there. It's like, whatever. I don't even ask you. I don't want to care who you are. And then that one dude is just like, all right, I'll take you up on it. Who are you? And then it was like, yo, I'm whatever his name, son of, and they're like, and he had the ring, and it was just like
tattoo in the joint.
And they're like, yo, he's royal. And it was just like, you know, the whole hey auntie, you know what I mean? It was just hilarious. Like, yo, like, man, he is in the bloodline, he's family. He belongs there. And he's then able to challenge for the throne. Just definitely want to get you guys' thoughts. I've definitely felt like it was just very dismissive of his origin. And I was just like, man, are they trying to say something deeper here where it's just like, man, is there a divorce of the African American in terms of their connection to Africa? You know, almost like, you know, there's no possible way this guy's Wakandan. Get out of here.
I think so. And the reason why I think so is even after it's revealed that he is of royal blood, they continue to call him foreigner. And I see that as just like, you're still not quite one of us, you know. And maybe it's some of that is maybe they're angry that he eventually does take the throne and whatnot, and they do respect his blood right to challenge. But there's this distinction that he still isn't quite one of us, and I think that is just a blatant sort of disrespect and pushing away of his connection to them. It could also be linked to just the kind of the embarrassment that Njobu is kind of like the person that is killed, and like, you know, N'Chaka tries to like hide that. And so there's kind of like this family secret that they're probably still kind of trying to hide too. Yeah, so
that's true, because he was like, "Look, my dad had panther claws in his chest."
Yeah,
and I was like, "Oh, you're not supposed to talk about that."
And then, what's Forrest Whitaker's character, Zuri. He at one point when he's finally telling the story to T'Challa, he's like, "It's the lie that we chose to kind of uphold." So I think part of the embarrassment is just the sense in which, like, this is the family secret. This is the stuff we have in the closet. So kind of wanting to push that to the side.
Yeah, that's good. I definitely felt the same way.
Yeah, that was definitely a powerful scene. And again, like I said, that's part of the African diasporic dialogue that we see in this movie that can actually help heal and move us toward a direction, because now we have a piece of art that is celebrated and that we were all involved in, and that can actually start a conversation around what does it mean for us to have these parts, because it is sad that, and I guess this is why I have an empathy toward Killmonger, and I don't just see him as just some maniacal, you know, crazy person. Because in the end, I actually think that really the bigger villain in the story is like the Wakandan, you know, response and perspective that creates Killmonger in the first place. They said, you know, actually, T'Challa says this, that he's a monster of our own making, and he says, "I must right these wrongs." You know, and after his father says he's the truth that we chose to omit. And I think that there is a powerful statement about what does it look like, the irony as an African American person to be looked down upon and to be, you know, by an African person or a Caribbean person, as if we chose our circumstances, and as if we're not the same people, like, you know. So I think that there's a power behind that truth to be reckoned with and to be reconciled, and yet at the same time, the reality that we are to be held accountable for the individual choices that we make. And I think that is a beautifully complex conversation that Killmonger kind of exposes.
But one thing I wanted to talk about with Killmonger, I was reading certain think pieces on it, and one of the criticisms I was seeing was they were saying that Killmonger is just a portrayal of just the African American male as thuggish, as one commentator called it gangsterism, and as the only sort of American outside of, you know, the white male American, it was just a bad portrayal as the Black American, and I just wanted to know, do you guys agree with that? Like, what were your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Rasool put it really well when he said that Killmonger is hip hop, because I definitely think that that's a really good. Those are all the themes we see in the music.
Yep.
I want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think that what we said in the last episode about how the pressure to make this movie a complete exploration of all of the African diaspora, right, in 90 to 100 minutes is just kind of unfair. I mean, you have to tell a story and you have to create villains and heroes and contrast. So I feel like, that's just an underlying thing. But beyond that, it's interesting to me too how we don't hold our music to the same scrutiny as we do like a movie. Like I don't hear anybody saying, we shouldn't have this album out that's celebrating and glorifying violence and misogyny because it's bad. Like, but we do it when in a movie. So I just think that's interesting. But so for me personally, like I said, I identified with Killmonger because I felt like it was a raw nerve, and that's what hip hop is. It's like everything that's it's just raw, it's real, it's ugly in some places, it's beautiful in other places, and I'm not going to apologize for or I'm not going to try to defend the stuff that's ugly, and I'm going to say, yo, that's ugly, but I am going to also celebrate and identify the parts that I feel like are true and that represent truth. And I think the ability to call all of it out for what it is significant, but also just what it is, but the context from which it comes from. Because that's, the reality is that if they would have just made him into this blind rage, that would have been one thing. But when you start to unpack his story, and what you see is that he's all these different identities. When Ross first hears him, no, he's not a Wakandan, he's an American. He's one of our guys. He's been trained by the CIA. So I think that there's this element in it, because what I caught the second time I watched it was the reality that it wasn't even a coincidence. This dude created this elaborate situation where once T'Chaka dies in Civil War, he then launches this plan to connect with Claw to find a piece of vibranium so that Claw would lead him back and it would expose the Black Panther, and he would get led back to Wakanda. But what they say is he did this on purpose because of the transition of power. And that's when you tackle, do a regime change in a transition of power. So it wasn't even a coincidence that he finds himself in the mix and, with T'Challa when he begins. And I think that exposes, intelligence, a strategy, some layers to that. But, and then I think at the end, there was just it's a tragedy. He's a tragic figure, but I think he's a complex figure too. And so for that, I'm okay with that, especially given the fact that there is this diasporic conversation that is happening and this awareness. The whole premise of the movie is, yo, we messed up, we need to make it right, which is why at the end he comes back to Oakland and to the very spot that's like this aspect of redemption and atonement, and it's like we're going to atone for our sins and of the sins of our fathers, and we're going to build something where things were destroyed. And I find hope there. And yes, he was the only person, but I don't see that as a depiction at all of everybody. I think that was, in fact, that I know it was off camera, but Njobu thought enough of an African American woman to be with her to have a child in the first place. So I didn't take it that way at all.
Yeah, I mean, so we got to talk King T'Challa. What were your thoughts on his character in the film?
Yeah, so one of the things I really enjoyed about T'Challa was just how vulnerable of a hero he was. I'm really not used to seeing, especially in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a hero that exposed. We see Killmonger expose him for the ideals that he carries about Wakanda and keeping it just very closed and, having very strong borders. We see his father, like finding out his dad carries all these secrets. Zuri is like complicit in carrying those secrets as well. His general is one-upping him in combat. He's getting beat up by Killmonger. He kind of got beat up by M'Baku as well. And so it's just like, man, he is in turmoil, right? He's just like internal. He can't look to his heritage anymore for his confidence. He can't look to his own strength for confidence. He can't kind of look to his suit and his identity as a Black Panther, because he loses that, right, once Killmonger is also the Black Panther. And so I just was really taken aback by how much this is a character who is vulnerable. This is a character who's exposed. This is a character who needs people. This is a very human superhero. right? This is not Thor. This is not Tony Stark. This is not someone who comes in to save the day and everyone's just in awe of his abilities. This is someone who's like, man, there's an inner storm inside of him that he's wrestling with, right? And you see that come out whether he's in the suit or not. This is a very complex character, and so that's one thing I really appreciated about T'Challa. It's almost like watching him come of age, right? And just like he was a prince for a really long time, and you almost see him like when he loses his ability to look to his father, and he's talking to Zuri, and Zuri's like, I promised the king, and he's like, I'm your king now. And it was just like, oh, okay, like you're learning what it means to even be in that position. And it's like your first couple days on the job, 2 dudes are ready to beat you up and try to take your job from you. And it's just like, man, that's gotta be tough. And so I love how they were just able to bring a very human element to a hero in this movie.
And it was one I could relate to. And I think that's where, because in what we see in Winter Soldier, and I remember the scene when T'Chaka dies, but before, you see this deep love that he has, and when he looks at his ring and he just has this resolute, just like, and at that point he is on some revenge, you know what I mean, very much. But this question that he asks when he interacts with his father in the ancestral plane, am I ready to lead? I'm not ready to lead without you, and I can relate to that. My father passed away, was killed when I was 6 years old, and the haunting question that is in a lot of especially young black men's mind of like, can I be a man without having been led to see what manhood looks like? Is something that I think, and the answer to that question being a collective response, a communal response of it takes a village to help us become all of who we're supposed to be. I think is a very powerful and strong, and I think that's where T'Challa's strength comes from. The fact that he is willing to listen to Nakia, he is willing to listen to Okoye, he is willing to listen to these different people and be informed and shaped. Because the reality, I think, in the fight scene, his restraint is what ends up getting him in trouble. Because there's several moments where he could have just gone all the way and killed Killmonger. Yeah, and he doesn't, and he refuses. So even in his lack of wisdom and full sense of confidence, and there's still some inner strength in him that we see, and I think makes him a really great figure to learn from, and that gives him a certain quiet strength that is strong in its own way, but in a different way because it values the insights and the input of other people.
Yeah, I think all you guys are raising some great points. I think for me, the thing that I love the most about T'Challa was you saw in him a man who, although he really had great respect for his father and the traditions, a willingness to look them in the eye and say, you were wrong. And that takes a lot from a man to do that. And you see him saying very clearly in the beginning, saying, I can't leave without you. I have so much respect for you. I need you around, to come to the point where he recognizes, even for someone he doesn't know. Keep in mind, he doesn't know Killmonger. He could have easily just went the cover up route and you're not one part of us. But he's like, no, this was wrong. We did wrong, and we actually need to improve in some of these areas. And it was surprising to me even to see his, when he's not completely dead, but he's in the snow and he's talking to them a second time. The ancestors are still selfish in the way they're telling, all right, time for you to come to us, be with us now. And he's like, no, I've got to go back and deal with this. You guys not getting it. There's this guy on the throne and he's going to do all this damage. And just that it's so noble to see someone be willing to break with tradition that he loves, respects, honors, and recognizes what is wrong. And for me, that to me just informs a lot of the things that I do, some of the traditions I uphold, even as a Christian, and maybe even some of the theological traditions that I might hold on to, or things that I respect. The need to always be reforming, always looking into what you hold on to, not because you don't care about the past anymore, but recognizing where could we be doing better. and where may have been doing completely wrong. And when we're being exposed and having to be faced with that, having the courage to say we were wrong and we do need to change and we do need to adapt. And I'm sure there's a whole bunch of things probably going on in his mind. How is the Wakandan kingdom going to receive this total change in direction when they've been safe and secluded and thriving? Now they're going to be more and more exposed and opening themselves up. And I'm sure he's probably expecting backlash from that, but the courage of a leader to say, I'm probably going to be not well liked for this, or maybe he will be liked. I don't know. There's an uncertainty there, but I'm still going to take us in this direction because I know this is the right thing to do. And I found that to be very admirable.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on that, I was also looking at T'Challa at the end of the movie with a lot of honor and a lot of admiration because, you know, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you don't get to see the superhero who is also the political leader of the nation as well. He's a king and he's a superhero, right? And I was struck because, spoilers for Thor Ragnarok if you haven't seen it, but at the end of Thor Ragnarok, Thor is now in that position where it's like, okay, Asgard is basically on a spaceship and he's like, Odin's gone, and so it's like all on him now, and it's just like, oh wow, I left that like, man, yo, Thor, how are you gonna do this? Like, yeah, you're the god of thunder, but can you lead this? Can you lead Asgard? And then come to see Black Panther, and he's like, yo, this is what I do. Like, I lead the people, and I'm a hero, and it was just dope to see like, man, someone really live that out and just show that. Even as other heroes are starting to now just come into that position for the first time and just kind of seeing him struggle through that and figure out how to do it. That was really cool.
That's good. All right. Well, guys, just last question before we wrap everything up. What are some of the redemptive themes that we can take from this movie as Christians? Obviously, we want to see everything in the lens of the gospel. Let's talk about that for a bit.
I think on a very basic level, when you see the backstory of the people of Wakanda at war, the different tribes in conflict with each other, and then this one particular warrior is kind of chosen and selected to, have this vibranium and unites all the tribes. And they still honor him by their choice. They choose to or not, but keep and remain their distinctive cultural traditions and expressions. That to me looked a lot like the gospel and a lot like heaven, where, I think about, how God in, Genesis, when he, chapter 6, I believe, when you just see, that he's grieved at the violence of humanity and the sense of conflict and murder and just chaos and just greed that kind of has primarily overtaken things, and decides to offer this gift of himself, like this messianic warrior king who will, ultimately unite people and give them this era of peace based on them selecting him as their king. And of course there's some that will reject him, like, Jabari did, at first, but ultimately the beauty of this, because ultimately there's this huge philosophical question of what do we do with the things that people have done to us, and in many ways, Killmonger's character represents one approach to that, which is get them back, which is to go after that. And yet there's another way, and this other way is the gospel, this vision for humanity that says it's more expansive than this, and we have something to offer the world, and we're going to own, the way to the cross is to own what we've done wrong, to break with the traditions of our fathers when that tradition doesn't line up theologically, spiritually to us, but to embrace a bigger vision of ourselves. And when we do that humbly, and we recognize that with our faults and with our shortcomings, that we can still come to that messianic king who, who's there for us, I think that's where we see the reconciliation. That's what I see the gospel in that.
Wow. Yeah, man. I want you guys to just have two scenes in your head. The scene where T'Challa fights M'Baku, and the scene where he's fighting Killmonger in, right in the ritual combat. When he's fighting M'Baku, he's losing. And all of a sudden his mother says, you have to show him who you are. And in that moment is when he gets this burst and he starts to win the fight. But he declares who he is in the fight. He says, I'm T'Challa, son of T'Chaka. And that's how he wins the fight. Now, if we now go to the Killmonger fight, the Killmonger fight happens after he now is exposed to the sin of his father, right? And in that fight, he can't show Killmonger who he is because who he is locked into this fallen man that he aligned himself with. And what it really showed me is just like, man, my identity has to be in something invincible, because when my identity is in something that's fallible and it falls apart, I fall apart and I no longer can call on that thing to strengthen me. And so when I think about my own identity, I am pressed to continue to just wash myself in the idea that I am rich, son of the king, because I can always call on that in the battles, because I really feel like life at all times is asking me, who are you? Show me who you are. And in the fight against like depression, in the fight for self-esteem, in the fight for confidence, in the fight for worth and value that I have every single day, I have to show it that I am the child of the king, because anything else that goes in that place, it is fallible, and I will eventually have to come to it and say, you are not good enough. You are not strong enough. This foundation is shaky. I can't actually stand on this. And watching T'Challa go through that just exposed in me like how breakable it is to put your value in what other people think about you. What other people think about you is a T'Chaka. What social media says about you is a T'Chaka. It is a fallible, broken thing that you will soon learn the truth about. And you're just like, man, that's not a legacy that I can call upon in this fight. And so that has really been implications for me from this movie, just in terms of my faith. Just like, man, I need to find something invincible to call on, to put my name beside, because in the life's battles, that's all you can call on. And so I definitely want to leave our audience with that.
It's good. It's good. Yeah, for me, I have two things. One, I think just very explicit kind of teaching of Jesus over and over again, the need for those who have to care for those who have not. I think very clearly one of the themes that was Eric Killmonger. I mean, obviously he had sort of these black supremacy things in the midst of that, but he also did have as a motivation the need to have the oppressed be liberated. And I think T'Challa comes around and applies a more peaceable sort of solution in the sense that we do need to care. And obviously you see him go to California and start, he erects these centers for outreach and that sort of thing. And I think we just have to look at our lives and look at the resources we've been given. And I think when we look at our lives very closely, we'll realize that we probably have more than we think we do. We're not all rich kings with billions of trillions of dollars at our disposal like T'Challa, but we have something that we can give to someone else. And I think we have an obligation. We have an obligation to care for the needs of others. So that's one thing. And I think two, Wakanda is coming. We may never see Wakanda here on Earth. Yes, we understand fallen world, but there is coming a day when every tribe, every nation will rejoice in Christ in the new creation. He will recreate heaven and earth, and we will see peoples, African peoples, thriving in a country. I don't know if it's going to be called Wakanda. I don't know what it's going to be. Maybe, right? Maybe but it's coming, and so it gives me great hope. And so I'm not don't hear me saying heaven by and by. Only care about it when I'm not saying we don't work to, in this life, try to, work for Black excellence. I'm all for that. Don't hear me sort of putting this into the next age. But I know for a fact there is a coming age where the Son of Man will come and lion will lie down with the lamb. There will be peace on earth and nations will thrive. And so that gives me great hope. Because one of the things I left the movie kind of hopeful but sad about was the fact that I didn't see a Wakanda, but then I remember the gospel that there is a time coming when God will establish this, and there's not going to be it's not like cultures and stuff will be completely erased. They'll be redeemed. Right, so I'll see peoples of African descent rejoicing and thriving, and I think about the fact that in the new creation we have all eternity developed to develop technology.
There we go.
And so we're gonna have technology that's even better than Wakanda. So so for me, I that gives me great hope. To know that there is a sense in which Wakanda is a foretaste, but it's coming.
Man, another lesson I learned from Black Panther was that God was really teaching me through this movie how to have patience. Man, in this whole idea of haves and have-nots, and just realizing that, man, I am very much, especially as an American, a have, right? Globally, I'm a have. And one of the most awesome scenes is right at the end when the spaceship comes down and the kids get around it and they're like, yo, I'm going to put this on eBay. And I was like, that is what everyone looks at and says, you know what, we should have never done this. Because look at how they react when we try to give them something good. It's just like they don't even appreciate what they have in front of them. And it's like T'Challa he just laughs with them. It's like he bypasses, because he's like, I understand you're not just oppressed physically, you're also oppressed mentally. You don't even know what to do with what's in front of you. And I'm not fazed by your initial reaction, because I understand that that's your worldview. That's all you know, is just like, oh yeah, I could probably get some money off of this. Yeah. It is also my job to be patient with you through your initial reactions to having something you never had before. And I'm actually going to teach you how to appreciate it. Yeah. And so it just taught me, like, man, like, I can be so judgmental even when I'm giving something to someone, because I'm just like, man, you didn't appreciate it the way I thought you were going to appreciate it, or you didn't use it in the way that I thought you were going to use it. But it's like, man, I have to be patient and walk with you, because sometimes people are so hurt. They're hurt to the point where they couldn't even appreciate the gift. And he is able to be patient with those kids. It's just like, man, I'm going to have a research center. I'm going to have these things that educate them on the real value of what they're seeing. eBay is not the greatest value you could put on what I've just shown you, but I'm going to show you what the greater value of it is. Yeah. And so I thought that was really awesome.
Beautiful. Well, guys, we
made it.
We made it, man. I'm sure if we thought even more, we could probably come up with a third episode, but I think we've done the movie justice. Again, in my opinion, it is, for me, top 2 movies I've ever seen. I'm still trying to sit with it a little bit longer. The more I sit with it, it might become my favorite movie of all time. But I think, suffice it to say, man, we have, I think, something that's going to survive generations, and a movie that is so impactful that I think it's going to shape the hearts and minds for many generations to come. So, any final thoughts? I
don't have anything else to say.
Go see it.
Go see it.
If you haven't seen it,
if you haven't already, see why it's already top 5, 5th largest open for a movie ever. Top 3 for the biggest open for the second week that's come out, and it's worthy and deserving of all of those accolades and benchmarks.
Absolutely.
So I say definitely check it out, and just continue that conversation and let us know what you think about what we share.
Yeah, absolutely. You can hit us up at cityimagepodcast@gmail.com. Share your thoughts. Yes, obviously social media. We're on Facebook, City Image, YouTube. We'll be on Twitter, The City Image. You can find us, hit us up. So signing out, man. This is Bryant, the Theological Giant.
Daniel, the Creator.
Rich, the Husband.
Rasool, the Messenger.
Peace, guys. See you in the next one.
Peace.